This is an Irish independent podcast.
Hello everybody, happy New Year's Eve. We are coming to you live from Talbot Street. Big thank you to Ronan Mullen, who's come in on this very special day. Ronan, hello.
Thanks for having me, Joe.
Conor, hello to you.
Hello to you, Joe.
We start here just after, I was going to say 11 p.m. and we do a countdown, but that won't make sense. This is going to be published first thing.
We're leaving this in as well.
Jesus. We're not live. I always feel sorry on the Graham Norton Show where they do the countdown, but they've made it such a thing now. There's such a wry smile to the camera, that it's become a funny bit.
It's the Jules Holland thing as well, you know. Everybody wearing t-shirts and then the snowman out on the set.
Yeah, will we do a countdown in this? But I don't think so.
Are you
see how we get on?
10, 9. Just don't see it working.
Are you taking the consensus view that New Year's Eve is the most overrated night of the year? When in fact, how is it overrated when everybody says that?
It's true, actually. Yeah,
everybody says that they hate it. So how is it overrated?
Yeah, it's like one of those players that people say the most underrated player, and everybody says it. So they just, it
goes too far.
Ironically, Dennis Irwin, your point of subject from a couple of weeks ago was always Paul Scholes.
Yeah,
so underrated.
Yeah, McAlealy.
Yeah. They named a position after McAlealy.
Yeah.
He wasn't that underrated.
Yeah. No, I think it is the most denigrated night of the year.
Nice.
New Year's.
My theory on New Year's Eve, and bear in mind that we're recording this in Talbot Street, is that you need to be somewhere other than where you usually live to knock any crack out of New Year's Eve.
Okay.
I think you need to be on an adventure. A few of us used to go away to a different European city every year, and it really did not matter where you were, just so long as you weren't at home.
Oh, that's actually... I think that's a great theory. I subscribe to that. My best New Year's was absolutely down in Dingle about 10 years ago with friends.
Yeah.
Yeah, that worked. Out in the street, lovely weather. Whereas in the main now, I'm sorry to say, they are on the couch and it's like...
Yeah. You're full Gary Neville.
We better pause this movie and flick over to Pick Your Poison for the 10 to midnight to 2 minutes past midnight extravaganza, and then, I don't know, wander up.
Ignoring the extravaganza is, I think, the key to enjoying it. It's like one of those years we went to Berlin, which is a great city to be in anyway, but particularly on New Year's Eve, and it snowed, sort of stereotypical snow. And we did the thing where everyone went to the Brandenburg Gate. And then we were there so long that everybody sobered up and all the train stations were closed because it was New Year's Eve and there was 1 million people in town and you had to walk through. And by the time we all got back to anywhere that was open that would have us, everyone was cold and already having tomorrow morning's hangover. So
I was in Galway last New Year's Eve and I went to college there, and it's obviously a different experience when you're a student living somewhere and going back as more of an adult. More disposable income is the number one difference. But it's the best city in Ireland, Galway. And it does kind of capture the New Year's Eve element. Everywhere is walking distance. You can kind of pop from place to place. Yeah. Usually you have to make, if you go elsewhere, you have to make a decision. And then you're like, why did I pick this place? Whereas in Galway, you can just go like 5 meters down the road and totally different experience.
Lots to be said for that, yeah. So yes, I mixed feelings on New Year's Eve, I suppose. I'm going to turn it around, actually.
Do you reckon? Yeah.
I think we were just talking about this the other on Bits and Bobbles, that coming to an age now where I have to decide what the traditions are.
Okay.
It's just
very mature, isn't it?
Of an age, it's like, well, what do I want New Year's to be? And I think from next year on, people will talk about Joe Molloy's New Year's Eve party.
Yeah.
I didn't know where you're going with that.
People will talk about that. That is the party to get the invite to. The house, it looks amazing. There's people walking around with trays of food. I think I'm going to make it.
It's going to be like
You don't want to be that house, but you want to be one of those houses.
Yeah.
You don't want to be the super ostentatious one, but you want to be in the conversation.
Yeah.
And then you want to be able to tell the story afterwards. We were having so much fun, we even forgot to do the countdown.
Yes. Yeah. No, I'm going to make that a thing. Kids running around, that kind of environment.
Brilliant.
Yeah. Obviously, look, there's only so many people I can invite. I would make both of you make plans elsewhere, and if you get the shout, you get the shout.
I just took it as read that we weren't invited.
Could I just use this opportunity to say congratulations to Joe for his 19th place finished in the charity Christmas raffle and work?
Thank you. I would say by the time this episode airs, that will have been re-gifted to somebody else. So don't get into too many specifics about what was in the hamper.
Well, I'd just like to point out that I've been working here for 18 years and I haven't won so much as a sausage. And then Joe, I'm going to use the word swans in here and Ram's home. So if anybody is just wondering as to the the source of the tension in the room during this podcast. I think it's the...
And I heard third hand that you got the ticket more as a courtesy. And
Yes.
so it just shows, it proves it's good to be nice.
Yeah.
Because you were rewarded for that.
Yeah, I was. Yeah. No, I did think to myself, I'm a little late in the door to be winning the hamper.
Yeah.
Someone won Andre Rieu tickets. That's pretty good.
Did you see he was tapping up the EU for 15 million quid to support his world tour next year?
No wonder he's giving away free tickets.
Yeah. So the point of this little New Year's Eve gathering, in lieu of Joe Molloy's New Year's Eve party 2025,
That's what we're going to call this podcast?
Yeah, I think so.
is Bits and Bob's year in review. So Ronan's here, I'm here, and I would say much loved, more than just an honorary Bits and Bobber, Conor McKeon is here as well.
Thank you. That's the first time that's been said, and I'm glad it's on the record.
No, we've said it behind your back several times. Connor's great on Bits and Bobs. We love having him on.
Usually when you're talking behind someone's back, it's not good, but it's actually just...
We just say great things about you behind your back, believe it or not.
It's borderline reverent.
The audio department is at a different part of the office to the sports department, so we can talk freely about all of them.
Yeah, well,
and we do.
I initially thought it was going okay, being a founder member of Not the Monday panel, and then soon afterwards it was disbanded. So
it's died a death, hasn't it?
Yeah.
It's not like we thought that's not working. It's just between the rugby and football and then different things. There've been two meaty things that we should go deep into those as opposed to do
you
a
don't
general.
need to. You don't need to
It's just
give
like
an explanation.
It's just like those bands who initially launch under a different name and then they find their identity.
Yeah. Now there will be another Not the Monday panel at some stage.
Yeah.
So I can't emphasize this enough, listener. This is not an exhaustive list. Do not feel the need to email in to say, how could you not mention? We are under no delusions that we will mention everything we should mention here. So what we have gone for is a fairly rudimentary black and white structure. 3 memories each. Not highlights, not lowlights. Memories, things when I am talking to you at my New Year's Eve party in 2037 and I say, what in 2024 do you remember?
Yeah.
I'm hoping that what you've said here is what you'll say to me then. That's the plan. So we've picked 3 each. We'll go around the tables, I think. Who wants to go first?
Let Conor go.
Okay.
The goat.
I'm sincerely hoping that what you pick here correlates with what you sent me on WhatsApp. You haven't changed your mind, have you?
I have changed my mind several times. I'm going to start with one that like I think maybe all 3 of us would have put in, or certainly it was suggested by the League of Ireland season, and I'm bringing that up as a sort of League of Ireland agnostic. Full disclosure. I grew up in a part of Dublin that didn't have a League of Ireland team very close. You had to get involved. People who were interested from Lucan in League of Ireland had some sort of family connection. St. Pat's and Inchicore was probably the closest team. So it just wasn't a natural thing. And because of that, and because there wasn't ever huge media coverage, live TV until recently, you just didn't really get into it. And it kind of passes you by. And it's not a kind of a snobbishness or anything like that. It's just not on my radar generally. And this year I wasn't looking for a thing to invest more in. I didn't have more time on a Friday night, none of that. But from 5-6 weeks into the League of Ireland season, I was hooked on it, gripped on it. And like I used to live in Phibsborough and I went to see Bows a few times and it was an enjoyable part of a night out. But I never got that invested in, how the team was going to go or how any other team went. But I just thought it was really interesting and I thought, obviously the Damien Duff thing there, Shells coming from where they did, it was a lot of drama, but there's always this conversation about, how can, if you like football, why would you like the League of Ireland? Because the standard isn't as good and we've got such easy access to televised top level football. But like I watched Manchester United, Manchester City a couple of weeks ago, and for 88 minutes it was absolutely unwatchable. And there was the creme de la creme, like the most tactically gifted, athletically gifted, well-versed tactical players in the world. And there was nothing entertaining about it except for the tension. And then there was a reminder there of maybe the League of Ireland's level when it comes to quality when Rovers went over to Stamford Bridge and were soundly beaten by a second string Chelsea team. But I don't think that's the thing that draws us in. We're pulled in by storylines. As much as we all like to think we're discerning sporting experts, the same thing brings us to sport as brings us to soap operas or whatever. And the League of Ireland had lots of it. And I don't know where it goes next, but I would be confident enough that if it did have another season like this, and it's a big ask, but if it did, it's not too far away from a major kind of explosion in people's interest.
I would tend to agree. You're Dundalk, aren't you?
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
gonna because
Because we have the same experience. I'm Selbridge. So, and I think it's the biggest problem maybe with the league in terms of its nationwide grip on people. If you're not from a locale which has a team, and that's the majority of people around the country, then because it's not on TV, or certainly wasn't on TV, how would you get into it? You know, and it's not a snobbish thing either. I mean, football is my main sport growing up. I love football. I do remember going to see Pats once and saying to my dad, "Oh, it's brilliant, we should go all the time." He's like, "Oh, I don't have time to come all the time." But a bit like you, this season was unavoidable, and I mean that in the best way, not a pejorative way. With a view to what it means and where it's going, there's obviously been the post-COVID uptake in attendances, which is real and great and organic. But I suppose this season, when we're talking at my New Year's Eve Bash 2037, we will sort of talk about this being the Damien Duff year. He was the gateway drug, he was the sun, and everything revolved around him. Duff is quite probably the reason you tuned in to watch Pats at Talca Park for that very memorable game, or lots of people would have, and it delivered, so that, you know, that's why it's been such a good season. And then, like, a feature of the league was like, as well as the Friday nights, it's like, well, what's Duff going to say now? What viral interview is he going to give, like, for the 8th week in a row? Like, some of the things are just amazing, really. Like, I just reminded myself that in July, the manager of the league-winning team, who is a Centurion Republic of Ireland player, said, "I'd raise Abbottstown to the ground because it's the most uninviting, unenthusiastic workplace, not in world football, but in the world." In the world. You know, he's comparing it here with sweatshops, if you follow the logic through. So I used to dread going in there once a month, so I'd level it. And I'd probably sack 90% of the workforce. And, you know, obviously that's a crazy thing to say. And Duff himself saw the craziness, which makes him all the more endearing and I think likeable, and wrote a letter of apology. You know, of course I wouldn't. I don't think that. It's just in the heat of the moment. But that heat of the moment stuff meant he was box office. The whole thing was unmissable. There were 5 different, I use the phrase, he's a gateway drug. There were 5 different gateway drugs. There was Kenny, there was increased exposure on TV, Virgin doing more games, the closeness of the league as opposed to Shamrock Rovers winning 5th in a row. So I'm with you. I was going to jot it down as well. I was talking to a colleague of ours who's a big League of Ireland man, and I mentioned we were doing this panel, and he sort of said, "Oh yeah, I look forward to listening to that." Almost with a, "I know what you feckers are going to ignore us again." But it was unignorable. Ignorable.
Ooh.
Which word?
one of them.
Okay. In the best possible sense. And I, like you, look on with interest to see to what extent personally am I in on it next year, and then in a wider sense to what extent the whole country is in on it. But I think absolutely this was, despite Dundalk's forays into Europe and different times where it kind of bubbled up, this was the, by a distance, biggest, greatest, most breakthrough League of Ireland season there has ever been in the history of the League of Ireland. We've just witnessed it.
Yeah, and the whole aspect of community probably doesn't get brought to the same level as it does in GAA, where it's like the centrepiece of the whole ethos, that it's very much to the forefront. But you take the Dundalk example and extrapolate that out. From my point of view, like, I would have gone when they were in Division 1 year on year, and it wasn't about the standard of football, it was about identifying with the team. And then ironically, when they were really good, I couldn't go to all the games because I was working late evenings usually. So it's less about the standard of play, it's about buying into something. And the best thing I can say for the League of Ireland is they've done it on their own 2 feet, on their own steam. You talk about whether the horse came before the cart or vice versa. Like, there was no buy-in from the broadcasters until this thing was happening on its own, before the broadcasters like, geez, there's something in this. We won't get into whether the public service broadcasters should be like making their decision based on numbers, but like Virgin Media are a commercial enterprise, and they looked at that and said, there's a product here, and they went at it. And, you know, it doesn't matter how they arrive at that decision. Ultimately, the fact that it's happening is a really positive thing. We've got this game at the Aviva Stadium to look forward to, which again is another staging post for this momentum.
Rovers and
Bows.
Knockout European game.
Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing. And yeah, like, even the season itself was so intriguing. We were chatting to Cal Dennehy about Jakob Ingebrigtsen and his tactics in the Olympic final, and I feel like Shells did that as well. Like, they just sprinted out to a lead. I was like a golfer, like, just trying to fall over the line in the end. But in the end, they actually did have to close it out, and they went to Derry and won.
Oh, here is Sean Boyd into the wall, deflected. Mark saves it in. Shelburne find the goal. Harry Wood, the jersey's off. 6 minutes to go. A massive breakthrough goal, a very late breakthrough goal for Shelburne. And this side that never says die, this side with an outstanding record when striking first, has found the moment.
Yeah, and I think that's actually important. If they had lost, somebody had drawn with Derry and won, they actually won it at the death very well.
Yeah, and it was it would have been even more incredible if Derry had been in with a real shout on that last day.
Yeah.
But you couldn't ask for much more. We're sometimes victims of the moment, but it's hard to argue this is one of, if not the best, League of Ireland season.
Yeah.
It's an interesting idea, though, of talking about the popularity or the success of a sport in a country. Like rugby would be considered like a sport that has grown exponentially over the last little while, but only in a very particular sense. Like there aren't any new rugby clubs. There's still a tiny number of people are members. They're still drawn. I will get to the end of this point eventually before I kick rugby to death. But they're still drawn, the majority of their players, from the same schools. Yet the size of the audience is incredible. It has become an enormous sort of social
national event.
Hobby.
There's an NFL quality, isn't there? No one plays it, but everyone watches it.
Nobody plays and everyone watches it. So growing that audience is not an easy thing to do. So it's one thing getting, filling. Okay, Daily Mount's a bad example because half the stadium is closed. But it's one thing to fill the stadiums, but it's another thing. And even if the people inside the stadiums don't appreciate that, but getting the likes of John Molloy or floating voters that don't have a direct sort of interest with a team or a connection to team to watch, that's a big thing.
It is, and it's difficult, because I would talk to Dan about it at times, and I would understand the logic of his point. This is Irish football, Irish teams, and you're watching Man United. Yeah, but you're trying to undo 30 plus years of me having a really deep emotional relationship with them. The Jesuits only need you till you're 7. United had me until I was at least 20, and I still I've now moved to an area where Shelburne would be my closest team, but to tap into that is it's just I don't know how it happens or why it happens. And like I said, I think Duff might get you down initially, and you meet people, and it becomes a thing. But as for the wider TV audience in Offaly, who do they support?
That is a problem with the League of Ireland.
What's their thing?
It's very centralised in Dublin.
Yeah, and if they have a relationship already with Manchester United, which the majority of football fans in Offaly will, that's the really difficult ceiling for the League of Ireland. How can you get the Offaly Manchester United fan to ditch Manchester United after X number of years and care more about League of Ireland?
But I think there's a difference, though. There's a difference between people actually going out and supporting a team and taking an interest in the League of Ireland. And a lot of people in this country don't have either. No. But I would think after this year there is a significantly higher number of people.
It's definitely higher, but I do think they, akin to the younger generation who support Messi and who support Neymar, I think there is a cohort who are interested in Duff and who are interested in Stephen Kenny. And obviously those figures being in the league is great and a big advance, but obviously when the cottage industry, the Duff goes, that'll be a bad day for the league, and we'll just have to see then. It'll be interesting, can it stand on its own 2 feet without the stardust? Because the Duff thing is just so exceptional.
Yeah, I think we will look back on this year, pieces will be written by Dan or whoever saying, that was the year it all kicked off, or that was the year we expected it to kick off, and then the exact opposite happened.
We won't know until the Joe Molloy New Year's Eve party of 2037. Okay, agreed, rubber stamped, that's a big part of this year for sure. Ronan Mullen, you're next up.
Yeah, one of the first episodes I did in here, we were chatting about the event economy. I think it was after the Ryder Cup ticket prices were released, and in that we were kind of talking around the All-Ireland final. Ticket prices were €100, and that's not accessible for a lot of people, but we can get into why the GA doesn't have a tiered pricing scheme for if you're in the top corner of the Hogan stand versus on the halfway line. That's another topic, but going to an All-Ireland final and supporting one of the teams and that team winning is kind of like a priceless experience for me. And we were chatting about your fandom of Manchester United. The team I was always most associated with was Armagh, just because it was my first live sporting experiences. Like 2001, it's my first live game, and then they won the All Ireland the next year, and it was like, this is mad. But for me, it was like, this is normal, because like I'd only ever known going trips to Croke Park, and then my dad and my sister went in '02, and you know they obviously got back to the final in '03. But like I was always thinking there'd be more days down the line, and as the years go by, you're not sure they will. You know, Dublin had that unbelievable streak, and Armagh weren't even in the same stratosphere. And then like this journey of the last few years where Ulster final heartache, and that seemed like they couldn't even get over that boundary.
Bottle jobs.
Yeah, but like that Kieran McGeeney had that level at him year in, year out, you know?
Yeah.
At Kildare and afterwards. And then basically out of nowhere to put this extraordinary streak together.
And like if I'd said to you, as Jimmy McGuinness and Donegal celebrated the penalty shootout win in the Ulster final, a moment which only copper fastened Armagh's lack of bottle, that they're going to win the All Ireland, you would have been like,
yeah, but like I know you're being a little bit tongue in cheek there. Like they obviously lost on penalties, which is a newfangled thing in the last couple of years, and Armagh have lost 90% of the penalty shootouts that have ever happened.
yeah, mentally weak.
Yeah, but like I know there is a bit of truth in that, but like in any other era, those games are replayed, they win probably 50% of them, you know. Yeah, I just thought it was so unfair, and I was looking at these lads who I've watched in Division 3, like going down to no mark grounds against teams they shouldn't have been playing, like Aidan Fucker and Rory Grugan, Stephen Campbell, who's on the name that most people will take away from this Armagh team this year. Like these lads did not do it the easy way, and they didn't win it the easy way either, like having to beat Kerry in the semi-final, and a hotly fancied Galway team as well, having, you know, there's so many layers to this. Like they had the famous game with Galway a couple of years ago. Yeah, it's just a huge source of emotion for me. Like it was just an extraordinary, priceless memory. Like I can't even quantify how much it meant to me. Like
it needs no selling. Did you go to it with your dad?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, me and my dad.
You went, yeah.
But like you're thinking, you know, it's not even an age thing, but like we're going year in, year out, and it's like getting knocked out in the qualifiers. Didn't win an Ulster game for years. Like didn't even win a game in Ulster with Guinea for years. And then walking out of Clonus after that Ulster final, you're thinking, Jesus, this is actually sick. Like it's not fair.
It was parody stuff then.
Yeah. No, it was just
And just for avoidance of doubt, before some Armagh person angrily emails in, when I say mentally weak and bottle jobs, I'm paraphrasing the accusations at them. These are not Joe Molloy's personal opinions.
Yeah, but like you can speak to the Kieran McGeeney point. Obviously, he's just the most extraordinary figurehead for any enterprise. Like, how can you not get in behind him?
I know. And the mad thing about McGeeney is like 90% of our kind of graw for him is just based on projection, because we never see. We just know there's someone really special there. We hear about it. You hear the odd anecdote. You never see it.
Yeah.
Like he's compelling in interviews, but I thought there was a moment where he did that speech at the homecoming, you know, where and it was kind of like almost trained rhetoric. They said we wouldn't do this. And we did.
They were told they couldn't beat teams above them. They beat teams above them. They were told they would never get out of the grip of death. They topped the grip of death. They were told they couldn't win tight games. They won tight games. Everybody said they wouldn't win the All-Ireland, and they won the All-Ireland! Yeah!
He said that in the press conference after the All-Ireland final,
right.
And I was thinking, like, and I like,
half of it wasn't true. Like.
I really admire Kieran McGeeney, and he's like, you know, he's the, you know, one of these people we all secretly want to be more like in lots of ways, you know,
and friends with,
and even if just returned the odd text. But he came into the interview room afterwards, and it's sometimes it is truly mad when you work in the media how much that the people involved pick up on it, you know. Like, and he said that, he said we couldn't close out tight games. We said couldn't do this. Now we're all Ireland champions.
He said we wouldn't get out of the group of death.
Yeah.
Nobody was saying that. Like everybody's getting out of those groups.
Like the thing about it is there's a spectrum of opinion now in any sort of remotely serious sport, and it's all being said. Everything from the very positive to the very, very negative.
Yeah.
And so if you want to find the stuff that's really negative and you think it serves as a fuel source, go ahead. But I agree with you. Like, I think McGeeney is one of these people. I'm so glad that Gaelic football is the thing that he pursues. You know, I'm glad that I'm in his kind of space because, you know, I listen to him even answering questions after matches, and he's one of these people who he has great clarity in what he believes in. He's not easily led, and he kind of answers questions as in, like the implication nearly is like, how can the rest of you not just see this, you know? And he breaks down a lot of the mythology around football and counties and about preparation and everything else. And I had wondered whether it was going to work out for them. Like over the last few years, I watched them at times. I remember Monaghan ran in 4 goals against them at the championship a couple of years ago, and they just looked like a team that was over elaborating. You'd have cornerbacks making a run and then staying on the end line in the corner forward position, but nobody dropping back into their position. And they looked like they were overcomplicating it. And then when they were making a bit of strides as a team, you know, when Reno O'Neill started to come through and they were starting to be very direct with ball at times, they had discipline problems, you know, and Kieran would fight you on that. You know, Geezer would, you know, as he did. Remember somebody said after the Galway match, you know, if you pushed them, do you push them back? Defending his players. But like, whether you think you're in the right or whether you think you're being hard done by, the fact was, like, was it 2 years ago? I think they had 4 disciplinary incidents where they had suspensions that would have held them back. So on a practical level, even that sort of stuff was holding them back. But no, this year was just really, really like, I wouldn't say it was a gripping year in terms of like the games. I'm not sure there was too many classic games.
No.
But as it came to the boil, with Dublin going out in the quarterfinals, and then a lot of people in Kerry assuming that they were going to waltz through, and then Armagh winning it. Like, you know, I love listening to people's experience of All Ireland finals that they've got direct connections to, because I'm like, I adore All Ireland finals. I get emotional at them even when I have no connection whatsoever. I just think they're incredible social and Irish cultural events, you know. But I do think they're a little bit sort of sullied nowadays, that a lot of the pomp and ceremony around them is gone because of timing. You have a much shorter lead in. People are only just digesting the hurling final, you know, from the neutral perspective. You're not really getting a full lead in to kind of read up to these teams and and then it's all packed away very quickly, and like there's no minor match beforehand, and it's now getting to the stage where people can't come and stay in Dublin, and so there's a lot of factors that are going around that kind of takes some of the sheen away from what I think are just amazing, magical days. But when you have a day like that, when a county comes and wins it after so long, when they're not expected to, you just lose yourself in the moment. They're magic.
Yeah, okay.
And just the last point, Joe, because I know we've loads to get through, but it's funny, like, this will be remembered as the year where the rules changed because Armagh won the All-Ireland. You know, it's kind of a funny retrospective thing we look back on, because the games were not amazing, but sometimes the sport itself is the least relevant thing. It's the stories around them. And Ciarán McGeeney, as when I say figurehead, he's obviously the coach, but like Armagh, the constitution of the Armagh football team is not what it was when they won it the last time. Like, Crossmaglen are no longer the bulk suppliers for this team. McGeeney came in when they were literally in the doldrums, and there's never been as broad a spread of selection across Armagh. Like, he's tapped into North Armagh, which was a soccer hotbed, and they're the bulk suppliers of this team.
Right.
So, like, he's the CEO of Armagh GA in reality. Like, he's every fingerprints on everything, and yeah, it'll be interesting. He's one of the main proponents that we don't need to change anything about this game.
No, it's true.
So we'll see what he actually does with the new rules.
I'm hesitant even to mention it, but then I think it might be insensitive not to. Obviously, what was an uncontaminated, straightforward story of joy around Armagh has nasty postscript with the situation in Miami. None of the individuals we've mentioned anything to do with the situation, but obviously that's going to play out across 2025 now in, I suspect, very difficult fashion for Armagh GA. So there is that situation, and I'm also not saying, by the way, that that's the most important aspect. Hence, I'm mentioning it. What'll I go with? So if we keep going at the pace we're going at, we'll be here until 2025.
We've been given our main one, so you give your main one.
I think the League of Ireland was my main one. I will mention, I suppose, if you're going for memories and something which is visceral, then I guess the US Open finale feels like that kind of a sporting moment which everybody was watching. You know, I spoke to people who were at the Euros, and all the journalists, they were trapped at some match where the trains weren't very good again, and they all stayed to watch the US Open finale. And I feel like everybody did. This was Rory. You can use your whichever turn of phrase you want, but as Bryson said, you did it to yourself. Losing the US Open to Bryson, the putt on 16, will forever live in the memory.
He's been rock solid on short putts all day long.
My goodness.
Then the mess he made of 18, but then it was such a devilish putt. You have some sympathy for him. The image of him in the scorer's hut with his hat kind of off his head, dishevelled looking, watching the most devastating loss of his career play out, I think. And, you know, he promptly missed the cut at the Open, and obviously he won the European Tour Order of Merit, but I think it just wiped out his season in many ways. For me, that was a strong memory. It is devastating for him. How this plays out for him will frame how we remember this. If this turns out to be the closest he ever comes to winning a fifth major, then it's all the more devastating. Obviously, if he goes on to win the Masters or win other majors, less so. But at the moment, it just looms large as one of these iconic kind of moments in his career. And I suppose the other thing to say briefly is, like, this year has marked the full and total fragmentation of golf week to week. It's a very hard product to watch now, and I say that as someone a bit like Conor who would have watched the PGA Tour pretty much every Sunday night and, you know, a bit of Saturday too. I've stopped watching so much golf because it's just so bad and so slow, and the field is so diluted. And obviously the majors are the antithesis to that, and even like the slowness and the walking from green to tee box and walking up fairways, and in a major that actually goes from being a weakness week to week when there's no real tension to being like the theatre of the whole thing. You're just hanging on every twitch of a facial expression or word between caddy and player. And, you know, one of the things I love about golf at this level is, like, you can have high tension protracted out across several hours, which is very hard in most sport. Like, I mean, in those Armagh matches, it's the last 10 minutes where really, well, it's like 2 hours of like, Jesus, I can't watch. So amazing. And just... his career is just so interesting. And I said it to Dermot Gilleese, if you were a debating society and you could pick Rory's career has been a great disappointment versus Rory's career has been a stunning success, yeah, tell me where to go and I'll debate it. Fine. I don't know where I stand, you know, and so this was kind of just like a high point of all of that. And, you know, you put 10, 15 years, a bit like you and Armagh, into somebody like Rory, which lots of us have done. That was kind of a mad evening, and like, it was so won, it was so done. On 16, he's about to knock in with a one shot lead and 2 holes to play. It was just done, and then the next 45 minutes were absolutely extraordinary. So I think that memory will be a tough one to shift.
Yeah, it will. And the other thing is, now we're at the point with Rory, you know, a bit like maybe supporters of Mayo were around 2016, 2017, where it's like there's only one thing that matters now. Are you going to win the next major? Or are you going to win the All-Ireland? And everything that happens in the other 48 weeks of the year or the other 20 weeks of the year that Rory plays competitive golf, we're forever projecting from that to the next major. And the problem with that is you can't, because it's very clearly now a psychological and mental issue with Rory McIlroy. And we were here talking about Rory with Dave McIntyre after his win in Dubai, and we were talking about how he closed out the final holes, and he picked some shots he wouldn't normally hit, and they were go-to shots to get it done, and that's fantastic. But the theatre of Rory McIlroy will be, we do not have any idea how he is going to react until he's in that specific position again. Even if it happens to him at the Players, if it happens to him at Bay Hill, if it happens to him at the Irish Open, it's not the same, because it's now... There are only 4 things worth winning for Rory McIlroy. Maybe he'll throw in the Ryder Cup as well, because it does seem to mean a little bit more to him than it did before. But we won't know how that pressure affects him until he puts himself in that position. And what makes it more interesting again is he's so good, he almost certainly will be in that position at some stage in the near future.
And that's to his immense credit. He keeps coming back. That's the other thing I'd say about Rory. He keeps putting himself in those positions. St Andrews, US Open, at LACC, and then again here at... where was the US Open again? Pinehurst. Yeah. So, like, he's just... Enjoy this while we have it. This is a once in a lifetime situation for Irish golf fans. That the biggest story in golf is from this island, and he's a good guy as well.
I said this to somebody the other day. They were talking about why is there so much coverage of Rory McIlroy and Shane Lowry in the Irish media? And I was like, well, like what? Like if the two guys weren't there, what, like would anybody in this country have any interest in professional golf? Whatever about people who play the game, you know, or yourselves.
It'd be limited to people who play.
Yeah, nobody would have any interest. Would you be turning in on a Saturday night for, you know, Ashkay Batia against Tony Finau down the stretch in Arizona? Like you wouldn't.
And we're a great golfing country, but it's like it's amazing to have him, and hopefully we have another 10 years. Okay, that's one each, and we're at 35 minutes. Let's pick up the pace. What do you got?
I'll go for the hurling final this year, and I'd have to expand the point of hurling generally. I know, like, there's
Jesus, here we go.
but like, I don't know of another sport that
we put like some kind of violin under you here.
There's not another sport that consistently delivers as many brilliant games, and like even up until included the last two of the year, the All Ireland Club semi-finals a couple of weeks ago. Yeah. If you go back to the All Ireland Club final in January as well, Éanna Burke's incredible point over his shoulder, one of the best points ever scored in Croke Park.
Yeah.
And we don't remember it, and the reason we don't remember it is there are so many brilliant hurling matches in a year, they kind of pass you by. Like the night that Cork came back against Limerick and Páirc Uí Chaoimh after losing the first. I mean, that was just unbelievable. And I think most people, anyway, neutral observers, will have a bit of a fondness for Clare hurling. I do, definitely going back to the 90s with Brian Lohan and everything else. And, you know, with John Conlon and Shane O'Donnell and then Tony Kelly, like, I know the debate is sort of superfluous or it's unprovable, but we're lucky enough to have lived through the careers of some of the genuine greatest hurlers of all time, DJ, Shefflin, Joe Canning, TJ Reid. But, like, to my mind, Tony Kelly is absolutely up there with any of them. And, like, Tony had a bit of a problem last, I think it was August, got the wrong job done on it and then had to have another operation on the ankle in. So he missed the guts of a year and he only started his first match last season in the Munster final. And it kind of felt like it might be a little bit too late for us to see the best of Tony Kelly. And then on the biggest day.
Puck out won by David Fitzgerald. Running again at the Cork defence, laying it off quickly. Tony Kelly, the captain, goes around the bend. Oh, beautiful skill. Kelly! Oh! Incredible! Incredible goal! Tony Kelly, the magician from Ballyea, the captain of the Banner County, has lifted the hearts of the people of Clare. We have three fantastic goals. Robert Downey, Mark Rogers, but look at Kelly, the stick work. Sheer, utter magic.
What a performance.
Yeah, wasn't this the year where he kept getting like time off the bench and so we're trying to get him there, we're trying to get him there. It just felt like they're running out of time.
His goal was just audacious, absolutely audacious.
He didn't think that much of it, you know.
Of course he didn't.
No, but I know what he meant. He was just reactionary.
But isn't that, you know, like, I mean...
And look, he's making very difficult mathematical equations happen in his head in milliseconds. And then his body responds. It's incredible. But I can see why he thought, nah, it's just the way it opened up for me.
Yeah, I love hurlers. Like fellas like him and like say Ozzie Gleeson, who hopefully we'll see again next year. Fellas like you'd watch them, like you'd pay to watch them poke a ball against the wall. You know, like they just have that incredible sticksmanship. Do you know what I mean? That kind of craft and guile. And hurling again is just, it's that one last kind of bastion of man-to-man duels. You know what I mean? Like they have yet to develop a way in hurling for you to mind the ball in the same way as you can in Gaelic football or soccer. You know, that idea, the principles of control and like preserving. It's so hard to control the ball and it moves so quickly, so far, that those really exciting elements to the sport just kind of pervade there. And I think it was a brilliant year for hurling, but I would think that most years are.
Yeah, no, it's a wonder. Like it just is. It's so good. It's spiritual. I interviewed Shane O'Donnell at the start of the year as like a big kind of sit-down interview. And the last question I asked him was, what's your ambition for 2024? And he said, win the All-Ireland. And I sort of nodded pleasantly. And then I thought, that was a shitty position to put him in. Like he had to say it, but he knows they're not going to win the All-Ireland.
Yeah. No, I was at the Gaelic Writers Awards last year and I was working for the sponsor. So I was sitting with Shane O'Donnell and James McCarthy. So it was just really interesting to see these two lads who went on an all-star trip like 10 years ago but wouldn't know each other that well, but they had stories from there. So it was just, but more so than anything for me, just an insight into how they think about the game and all that kind of stuff. And Shane O'Donnell, I think he was the hurling personality of the year rather than hurler of the year necessarily. Last year.
Sorry.
Right. Yeah.
I was like, well,
and likewise,
steady on.
Likewise, James McCarthy was the personality of the year but not ultimately football of the year.
Okay.
So there's Connor can correct me, but there's like a slight difference in
Yeah.
how that is,
Okay.
award is given.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Are you with me?
Yeah. But this year,
As in, I said last year.
yes.
Yeah.
I just want
So
to clarify.
2023.
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
Personality.
This is New Year's Eve, Joe.
Is it past 12 o'clock?
No, we're still in 2024 here.
Okay.
Sorry.
But this year he was the hurler of the year.
Yes, but I'm talking about, this is similar to you, before they won the All Ireland, like a year
Yeah.
prior, and it's hard not to root for him. You know,
Yeah.
like
He's everything that's good about sport and Irish people.
yeah, because the other, obviously, I'm sitting at a table and they're not all GA experts, so they're asking him sincerely questions like, "What's your background?" Like, he doesn't mention the amazing, incredible stuff he's done on the pitch, off the pitch. He's a very humble guy, so you're kind of rooting for him. And he's also he he belies all those old GA autobiographies you read where everybody does the same training. We're all running the same. Like, he comes back. They have him coming back at the ample time to get the max out of Shane O'Donnell, and it's such a reciprocal dynamic where they're like, "It suits me, it suits you. I'm not playing the league, but I'm going to deliver in the championship."
It's great maturity to Lohan, actually.
There's nothing sure than he's going to turn up and deliver, though.
Yeah, because Lohan obviously came through under the Mike Mack school and not Nan, and so he could very possibly be a no. This is a psychological test, and I need you to pass it. It's one size fits all. But like O'Donnell lives in Dublin,
Yeah.
and so when things ramp up with Clare, he leaves his life in Dublin, his partner, his everything, his job. Can work remotely, and he just moves back to Ennis with folks. And so that's why when he says to Lohan, "Look, how long can I have my life in Dublin?" Lohan's good enough to go as long as possible and then come down.
But I asked Lohan before I was at the press conference in Ennis before the All Ireland final this year, and I asked him about O'Donnell and like, how close did you think, or how close did you feel that you actually lost him completely because of that concussion injury he had a couple of years? And Lohan just said, "Oh no, I thought he was gone. I didn't think we'd ever see Shane O'Donnell play hurling again." So
you know that's why he has changed his style of play.
Yeah.
Because there was a certain fear of that kid that scored the hat-trick, catch the ball, head down, run into opposition and go by them. There was when he came back, he was like, "I might just kind of half forward line this a little bit and pick my points." So it's amazing.
The other thing about Shane O'Donnell this year was after one of the many Hurler of the Month awards that he won this year, he said, I wasn't in on it, but I was talking to somebody afterwards who told me what the line was, and they said, well, the line was that Shane O'Donnell told us that he wants to go into space. And I was saying, well, of course he does, because having scored a hat-trick in an All-Ireland final as a teenager and got a full bright scholarship to Harvard, it was about time he did something useful with his life. But I think he's abandoned that. So
he's been unlucky with the timing.
Yeah.
The next batch of Europeans to go is a few years away. He said if he had the body of work he has under him now, and the openings happen, they take a batch every 7-10 years, whatever it is, he'd have had a chance. And he's not sure he can wait around another 7-8 years for the next batch. So he's actually been a bit unlucky. But space, it wasn't a pipe dream.
Yeah,
it was a real I know they'd need my skill set up there.
To go back to your point, from our first topic, like Cuchulainn from Dundalk, but that's about the height of our hurling pedigree.
Is he?
Yeah.
Would you know that? Yeah.
Yeah, wasn't that why they have the puck fod around the Cooley Mountains or whatever?
Yeah.
Ah.
The castle is like a couple of 100 meters from my house.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, but I don't, in the same way you don't have a League of Ireland affinity, I don't have a hurling necessarily. So I'm watching it from just as very much neutral, and
like most of the country, really.
Yeah, but there's obviously strategy in it, and like there's tactics. Like, it is a lot of one-on-one drills, as Connor says, but like there are, and Richie Hogan identified that the game has evolved a lot in recent years. But I can see them in football. I've played it. I can see the dynamics at play and the tactics at play, and it's just a more interesting game for me for that reason, because I just see more going on. In hurling, I'm just watching the scores and the athleticism. But Shane O'Donnell typifies, like, he's just very identifiable. That's the skill set, which is admirable. If an alien came down and watched, like, he's just...
There was a period, though, in hurling about 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, when a lot of stats were coming in on Limerick when they became the preeminent team of the era. And there was a fear that it was becoming a very boring sport, because whatever was happening with the figures when they were being crunched, coaches were coming up with the same conclusion, which is the more shots you take in a match, so it was just became this: you take a short puck out to your corner back, he goes to somebody in the sixth channel, you take a shot from 100 yards, and if you miss, that's okay because you're set up on the opposition's puck out. And you were seeing these games that were like 33 points to 127, and they were rubbish. And I don't know what's happened, but we seem to have actually come out the far side of that again to an even better sport, you know.
Interesting. Ronan, pick number 2.
This is just a general, more of an observation. Daniel Whiffen, as amazing as another Armagh man, his amazing achievement, it's more that he's kind of, again, typified a new era of Irish perspective from athletes where we used to have like a brooding self-confidence. I say we as like our most eminent sports people like Roy Keane, that they were very self-assured but weren't like overzealous in showcase that. Whereas he's like walking in like, I'm going to win and I'm going to win well.
Daniel Whiffen of Ireland, the 23-year-old from Loughborough University in Larne in a small little town in Armagh, is in second place to Giorgio Paltrineri, but he goes for goals. 25 metres to swim for Daniel Whiffen, but here comes Fink in lane 2 past Paltrineri. Has he got enough to get up and retain his title? I don't think so. It's going to be a gold medal for Ireland. In lane number 4, Daniel Whiffen strikes gold.
Daniel, you're the Olympic champion. How does it feel?
I mean, amazing. I mean, what's my name? Sorry, Daniel Whiffen, Olympic champion.
You know, I love that. Like, it's great. And Rhys McLennan was the same. Like, he obviously had such disappointment in the Olympics a few years ago, but like said, I'm going to be back and I'm going to win. And, you know, I just love that essence of talking like that and backing it up. And it doesn't have to be, you know, braggadocious or come across as arrogant. I think it's sincere. Like, these people wouldn't be where they are if they didn't have this belief. And I just like that we're not afraid to talk about it now.
Yeah. It's kind of mad. Like, we've only managed 14 gold medals in history, and 4 of them.
Yeah, because even like Paul O'Donovan, who's arguably our best athlete of all time, is kind of, and it's like everybody knows now, but it's like, oh shucks, you know, like, you know, just try my best and see what happens. But it's a different kind of confidence. Whereas I find it nice that we finally made peace with the fact that we can be confident as a sports nation.
Yeah. It's great games, I guess. You know, it'll always have a soft spot, I think, in people's hearts, 2024. Because I was at 12, and then over the subsequent years, you realise lots of the events you were at, the gold medal winner was not the gold medal winner. It was like it was farce. The number of kind of upgraded medals from London is a joke. You know, you should just, out of interest, go onto Wikipedia and you'll just see it's just a never-ending list. And then Sochi was shortly afterwards. I was fairly done with the Olympics. I just thought, what's the point in watching this when you can't even get excited about any kind of result? And so I remember in Rio, I took annual leave, so I didn't have to do it. Tokyo pretty much did the same, bypassed it. And then this year, just with the job change and stuff, I couldn't. I needed to work. And I was like, oh, God, this again. But it just, there were certain like Mona McSharry out the gate. It's like, well, you can't not be a little bit moved by that. That was amazing. Then the next night was Daniel Whiffen. This is kind of something. And I think for the first 7 days of the Olympics, Ireland won a medal or assured themselves of a podium finish for 7 straight days. So you couldn't but I was thawed out by the time Rhys McLennan did his thing. I was like, there is still something special about this.
We were having great fun online with the medal table there in the first 5 or 6 days, weren't we? We were holding our own up around 6th and 7th and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I was the same. I am a bit the same as you when it comes to the Olympics, in that I'm disengaged from the track and field outside the Irish athletes. Yeah. I listened to Cathal Denny in here the other day, and Cathal is so interesting to listen to, because he has an athlete's, not just a zealot's knowledge, but an actual athlete's knowledge. And I was nearly more interested in him listening to the dynamics of the races than I was to watch the races. And I think what happens is you become disengaged. Like, I honestly couldn't have told you 2 people in the 100 metres men's final this year, whereas like in days gone by, you would have known all of them. I would have known Addo Bolden, like, you know, Trinidadian sprinters, because you watched a lot of it. And that is the price that the sport itself pays.
Yeah, it has paid a price.
But weirdly, my Olympic memory, just to sort of be self-indulgent for a minute, is strange in that, like, we haven't even mentioned Kelly Harrington, like, when the second gold medal, like, that's incredible in different Olympic games.
Yeah.
But my one was the relay final. Like, it was just
same, you know,
not what you expected. An Irish sprint team.
Yeah.
And they came so close, and the look of disgust on Rashida Adelecki's face afterwards was something that stayed with me, and you just knew straight away that she means business. Yeah. Like, she's not there saying we're the first Irish sprint team to, you know, she's like, we should have won a medal. Why didn't we win a medal? And I I suppose I didn't think much about the Olympics before they started, and then you just got sucked into it. But that for me is my abiding memory of it.
I think if you kind of consider track kind of Broadway, we've generally had to win our medals off Broadway. You know, the boxing and I guess the pool, albeit that's not a straightforward story, or you know, the rowing. But actually, it's funny you say that. For the 4 gold medals, the night, and again, where you are and what you're doing, it's a personal thing. So I was at a barbecue with my family, and my daughter was like, we were like, the ladies are running, and she's like 1.5, and she starts saying, ladies, starts running up and down the hall, you know. There's all that going on. But I do remember thinking when they walk out, and the entrances are kind of, maybe it's a bit frivolous and silly, but when they do a little thing.
Yeah.
But I thought, the 4 of them walked out, I just thought, these are like rock stars.
They were, yeah.
They just look amazing. They just have like a certain kind of X factor. And I was full sure, based on what everyone said in advance of the race, they'll run well and finish 6th and never be actually in the race. But like somewhere around the 3rd leg, when you thought they're going to win a medal here, of the whole games, that was the one I was stood up screaming, go, go, go. You know, it was really amazing. And it shows that medals aren't everything because they didn't get one. But I think it's my favourite Olympic memory of the whole thing, which is again, it's a perverse thing to say when we won 4 gold medals and a bunch otherwise.
It is like it is theatre too. Like I watched Kelly Harrington's gold medal fight in a pub and in Ishboffen, you know, and it was like it should have been the perfect setting for it, but she was so comfortable in the fight, and like even us in the pub knew that, you know, we were like, oh look, this is home and hose. But the 3rd round was a victory lap nearly at that stage.
And do you know what's interesting? I hate watching soccer matches, like predominantly Premier League in pubs. I just want to watch the sport. But I just, the summer and you're out and about doing different things, I saw a few of Kelly Harrington's fights out in company of Irish people. And like we've had so few kind of like good Irish moments that I haven't been in pubs for many Irish moments in the last 15 years.
Yeah.
It was like the communal experience of the games and Irish people doing well was lovely, you know, it really was.
Yeah, not to make it too elemental either, but like there is something about an A to B sports format where it's like you're watching Reece McLanigan and you're hoping he hangs on. You don't quite know what's happening, whereas you don't need to explain much to someone. You know, I remember I had the same experience with Thomas Barr in 2016, where it's like, because he came fourth, but he's so close. Yeah. And it's just like the whole, our guy is in the mix, like it's actually amazing. So that was
that's good. The Olympics for sure will endure for different reasons. I kind of got like a bit muddled. I didn't know what to pick. I don't want to be worthy about this, but I feel we should mention, and we did a show on it last week, which I'd still recommend you go back and listen because it kind of will do a better job than I can now of just illustrating the debacle that is FIFA. And we are going to be stuck with this for the next 10 years. Like at my New Year's Eve party 2034, we'll be saying this is the World Cup year, but we'll have had 10 years of Saudi and FIFA and all the stories and the migrant deaths and the things that are going to happen. And I suppose it is noteworthy in that it just confirms that the Gianni Infantino era, and we've had plenty over the last 7-8 years to suspect as much, but it just fully confirms the extent to which the most popular sport in the world is once again like firmly in the hands of very questionable leaders. Because to be fair, Qatar was gifted, it was a final parting gift from Blatter, as was Russia. And like, let's be under no illusions, Infantino and FIFA didn't do very much about the worker situation in the build-up to Qatar. But you could say, look, that was their mess and they were doing the best they could. But this whole manoeuvring to gift it to Saudi Arabia on a host of levels, which I won't go into now, but like the chicanery is kind of jaw-dropping, and it happened in plain sight. This isn't Qatar and suitcases of cash in hotel rooms, which we learn about afterwards. Like all the manoeuvring was just done, but they're not beholden to anyone. Media, obviously no states or courts or anything. It's just like we're beholden to ourselves and we own the game, and so we do what we want. And, you know, there are serious issues in sport, be it doping or the inequality with female sports or the inequality, I suppose, within things like soccer between big teams and small teams. But all of that is like so insignificant to the fact, and we touched on the documentary in our episode last week, and we went through just one case study of a young man who left Nepal, and he was just trying to make a go at life and work hard for his family, and he got sick 5 months in and told his camp leader, who accused him of faking. And for 2 months his friends pushed him around in a wheelbarrow, and he got sicker and sicker and sicker, and they said, okay, you can go home, but you have to pay a fine. It's all your 5 months' wages that you've earned thus far, which was clearly unpayable. And so his friends found him dead in his room, and we played the audio of it. It's chilling. And what resonates is when he's brought home to Nepal and his father meets the coffin, and it's like, this is how these people are being treated in Saudi Arabia. This is what FIFA have, after Qatar knowingly signed up for. So innocent people are going to die to make these stadiums and make the 200,000 hotel rooms and all of this kind of stuff. And like human commodity is valued, it seems, not very much at the moment. Human life, rather, is a commodity not valued very much. But that is going to be, that's the decision that's just been made here. And it's so disgusting, you're like aghast. And FIFA and friends will swill in the 7-star hotels, and the World Cup will be a giant success. And I'll watch every minute of it, as will all of you listening. And it's like, what the fuck's going on here? Yep. So it's shocking, and it is the most important story in sport in some respects.
Yeah, I got a little reminder there to the sort of surreal element to the Qatar World Cup there recently. I was reading a piece in The Athletic about how did Salt Bay end up on the pitch a full time and that's what happens with, when you have a despotic owner of chief executive of a major sporting organisation, because as you said, like, they're not beholden to any government. They're not beholden to some sort of, international sporting committee. They can literally just flog their wares anywhere they want, and they will allow their product, which is basically the best product in the world, to be used for nefarious means. And like, not only are we all implicated, we're all so far down the road of that it's irreversible. And the more you think about it, that's even before you take into account the migrant deaths and the human rights abuses. The more, because we're at the point now, and I was guilty of doing myself a couple of weeks ago, writing a piece about the match, and about how it's, how after that's over, Rory McIlroy and Bryson DeChambeau, which should be one of contemporary golf's great modern rivalries. I think they'll play each other 4 times in the next 16, or they'll be in the field together 4 times in the next 16 months, 5 depending on Ryder Cup eligibility. And the rest of the time, Bryson will go off and, for minimal viewership or interest, and make blimp loads of Saudi cash. And we're just at the point of making jokes about that now.
We are.
Because, what do you do? Like,
yeah, it's true. It's true. Like, you just can't, it's tiresome to listen to someone point out the human rights situation, the wrongness of it. So you just get on with it. Right, final choices.
Well, my one is along similar lines, and it was one that was earlier in the year, but like, it's one of those ones that maybe hasn't resonated the way it should, but it was Jonathan Hill's appearance at the Public Accounts Committee.
I accept that you can't see the words in the redacted statement, but that is for legal reasons. But within that, just to explain, both the then Finance Director and the COO had agreed to this request already, and that's referenced in the email. So I too agreed to it, although that was not a formal approval, as due process would need to be followed. Within that response, I added a throwaway line to that junior colleague saying, "Can you negotiate the same for me, please?" ? For me, it's clear that this was not a formal request, and it was in an email back to the junior colleague. In the emails that you
said, can I just pause you at that point?
Yeah.
So are you suggesting that the email, it says from Alex O'Connell on the 5th of December, and in the second paragraph it says, Jonathan requesting to be paid out his unused holidays. Are you suggesting that Mr. O'Connell was incorrect in taking that line that you say in an email I can't see, that he was incorrect in taking that as a request?
I can't comment for him in relation to whether he was incorrect or not.
You said that you didn't intend to request it. That was his
interpretation of the line that I have just explained to you, which isn't in the redacted emails. And so
you're suggesting that Mr. O'Connell did not read your instruction correctly, that a joke in an email went on to become a formal process?
I'm not saying that, but it's clear from the emails that is what happened.
You either requested it or you didn't. Did you request it?
And I'm saying that it was a throwaway line in the email, which he then interpreted.
Okay, let me put it a different way. Do you think it was reasonable for Mr. O'Connell to believe it was a request?
I think it was it was simply Mr. O'Connell's interpretation of the line.
That feels 10 years ago to me.
Yeah, but I'm talking about this from the point of view that, like, all Jonathan Hill really had to do in his job was not draw attention to himself. And it's a fair achievement, given everything that went before, for him not to have felt like a breath of fresh air in that role. And I mean, the FAI, like a lot of sporting organisations recently, did a big survey where they came up with an enormous figure and said, well, to get football back on the right track, this is what we need. And there would be a lot of people in this country be sympathetic to the idea of, pumping a higher level of funding into football to get it going. It is the biggest sport in the world. But the problem is it has to go through the FAI. And when the issues around governance and the spending of money of whatever go from one chief executive onto the next chief executive, you just wonder what politician is going to stake their reputation on the FAI spending, an increased amount of exchequer funds prudently. Because Jonathan Hill went in there. It took 6 months to appoint a men's team manager. They didn't have a women's team manager. They didn't have a title sponsor, and he wouldn't move over and live here. And then you had the farcical situation where he gave a comically redacted email into the Public Accounts Committee that just about had the number of the sheet of paper on it. And you're thinking, like, this should have been an easy job, and he did not make it easy.
Yeah, it's a good one to mention.
Yeah, I think the redacted email, ironically, is emblematic of the whole issue. Like, the one thing the FI needed in this new era was transparency, and this is literally the exact opposite. I think Conor hit the nail on the head there, and
jury's very much out in the FAI, isn't it?
Yeah, because there is an understanding that the football product on the pitch and the grassroots is on its knees, and that's going to take a period of time. But there were so many easy wins that they could have done, and they just haven't.
Can't trust them to win those easy ones.
Yeah. You can't put any trust in them to overhaul the thing.
And by all accounts, some of their presentations to those in the Oireachtas have not been good.
No.
And Duff senses this, I think, is a read from some people, and hence his frustration, because the league, the academy situation is drifting.
Yeah.
And it's an urgent situation.
But that situation was that the FAI withheld 6.2 million, or the government withheld 6.2 million, which was bailout funding from the FAI, because the FAI had broken its own memorandum of understanding with regard remuneration to their chief executive.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that is a bizarre situation to find yourself in.
Yeah. Ronan, what's your final choice?
I suppose, thinking of your New Year's Eve bash in 2034, the unfortunate thing about...
I'll have really hit my stride by then.
The unfortunate thing about sports washing is it kind of works, because after the World Cup in Qatar, people were just enraptured by the World Cup final, and it was one of the best World Cup finals of all time, and it was
a great World Cup.
It was Messi's coronation, and the players loved it because it was the middle of the season, and it wasn't an awful experience for them. And I'm just moving into the boxing realm here because as a sporting product, stuff is being financed and happening now that wouldn't otherwise happen if Saudi hadn't got involved, and they basically used boxing and latterly golf as their gateway drug into football, which is the be all and end all. We had Don McRae on before the Fury-Usyk fight, and he was saying people in the taxis didn't even know that the boxing was happening, but it was a means to an end to get football in the door. And that's their ultimate goal. But I can, the Saudis, one element of it, their stranglehold in boxing's not going anywhere. They're the power broker for all the main fights. But on the flip side of that, you've got the social media influencer side of things, and we played the clip of Jake Paul and Mike Tyson and the gift of a pigeon and all this kind of stuff. And I thought it was
dystopian.
It was the perfect representation of where we're at with that social media boxing. But at the same time, that set the platform for one of the great Irish moments of 2024 and one of the great athletic endeavours by an Irish sports person, when Katie Taylor, Amanda Serrano too, and what she went and did over there. Just incredible, and a moment that a lot of people will remember from 2024. So I, as a boxing fan and taking my journalism hat off, I'm seeing so many top class matchups week to week that you wouldn't otherwise see if it weren't for the input of these other things. And you're kind of
how do you feel about that?
Yeah, you know what I mean? It's tough.
Yeah, you wonder whether we would have seen Mayweather, Pacquiao far sooner in their careers had the same kind of influence being exerted back then.
They've taken all the hurdles away.
Saudi Arabia has become the governing body of boxing.
Yeah, because Frank Warren and Eddie Hearn hated each other. Not least they hadn't even met. They wouldn't even be in the same room together. Now they're holding hands at these events. So I don't know. You guys as golf fans, it's a lot easier for me to get my head around it because I'm seeing these amazing fights, whereas Saudi Arabia has ruined golf.
Yeah.
It's had the total opposite impact. You can
completely-
make peace with it a lot easier than me.
Destroyed it. It's easier. Yeah, we can get
They've
it.
brought all the fighters together. They've moved all the golfers apart.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I sort of couldn't decide between a mention of the rugby year or the Euros. Like, it's mad the Euros were on this year. I feel like you should just quietly mention that. Is it strange Euros in that, like, France, awful, Portugal, kind of in a Ronaldo padlock, Belgium, terrible finished, England, really, really poor. Like, remember the days of Trippier left back and they scored, there were 23 of 24 teams in the group stages for goals scored and got to the final. Like, but my sense of the Euros was just how much how much more I love international football than club football. Like that mercenary aspect, which is inescapable now in elite football. It's flipped so amazingly at international football. You can see it in the emotion of the players when they score, what's going on in the stands. Like, it's amazing. I've never loved international football more. So that's me sneakily working in 2 for the price of 1 here. I guess the rugby thing is worth mentioning. Encapsulated by Kieran Frawley drop goal for Leinster at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. It's their Rory McIlroy in Pinehurst moment, and it just tails left. And so suddenly, a bit like Rory, all of the sticks you can beat Leinster with give it an extra oomph. And this is the weirdness of sport and the fine margins. But it was incredibly dramatic against Toulouse. And then a month later, he kicks the winning drop goal against South Africa. And ordinarily, those tests, I understand people saying they're friendlies, but this wasn't, because the world champions had been beaten once at the World Cup by Ireland. They hate Ireland. They think we're unbelievably smug. They think we're the smartest team in world rugby. And so they both went at it. There was no resting of anybody. These were 2 titanic matches, and they were epic. Helped by the fact that after the first test, Andy Farrell said, "Your body language is disgrace. They bullied you." And so within 10 minutes of the second game, there's blood everywhere. It was just visceral and brilliant. But a weird year in that November now, there's a big question mark over the Irish team. And I was there for Virgin on the day they won their second Six Nations in a row. And because they'd been beaten at Twickenham the week before, and the Grand Slam was gone, Irish rugby has now found itself in a weird spot whereby everybody was trying to say, "This is great, isn't it? It's so exciting." I think, no, it's good. It's good. And that's where they've got to with just winning the Six Nations. The World Cup still looms over everything now, which is a bad development for rugby. It's a bit like Rory and the Majors. Doesn't matter if they win every Six Nations between now and the next World Cup. So it was weird to be there for a Six Nations winning day against Scotland, but they didn't play well, and it wasn't the Grand Slam. And so it's like, no, I'm happy. This is exciting. But nobody was that excited.
It kind of bled into the November internationals as well. Like, winning 3 of 4 is hardly
bad,
and yet there was something not quite there.
I wonder if this great decade, Joe Schmidt took over in 13. We're now at 24. This unprecedented success was a hell of a journey to go on. The team exponentially improved in popularity, regularly knocking out 1 million viewing figures, 1 million people watching these matches. It was all set to climax at the 2023 World Cup. That was the natural journey, the Sexton journey, and it didn't. And now I just wonder, it doesn't matter. Nothing else matters now, akin to Rory. So actually, I think because they've had the last 10 years of success and won the Grand Slams and won the Six Nations now, and won in New Zealand and done everything, there's nothing left to do between World Cup cycles. I wonder if some of the kind of juice is out of it now irretrievably. Well, you can only do it once the first time. And so now I just think there's a degree of I think there could be a flatness to the Irish rugby team in between World Cup cycles now. So watch this space. I don't know, it may not, but that's my worry for the team now, that actually they've had the Schmidt start a decade into Farrell. It's been incredible, but now what can they do between World Cup cycles? Nothing. So
that's the problem with having such a small field too. Like if Ireland, I think, had a bad Six Nations next year, 1-2 games maybe or whatever, I think the interest would peak then again the next tour, the next maybe November international.
Bit of crisis.
Yeah, a bit of crisis I think is maybe. No harm.
That's
but interesting you said about South Africa. I do often wonder how, if there was a survey of all the major rugby playing nations, where we would rank in popularity. I get the impression that we're not hugely popular in those other countries.
We seem to be drifting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a shift.
Yeah.
Big time.
Is that the price of success? Or are we a little bit they're having themselves.
I think it's good if they're. You only hate someone if you think they're a threat. So they probably looked at us as little harmless cousins, and now
well, let's cling to
at
that
the top table.
Yeah,
and like you mentioned, that not to go over old ground with the Rugby World Cup, but it wasn't as if that was the crescendo. They turned up at that World Cup. It was just.
Not everyone would agree with that, Ronan.
No, but they didn't fall like they did in 2007 when we were having similar conversations. That was a disaster. Whereas this, they could have beaten New Zealand. That game was played 10 times. Probably would have won more often than not. It was just the way the cards fell that evening.
Yeah, I just think a lot of the storylines are gone now with Ireland. It's you either go all the way or you don't do anything. And
I think so.
I do remember as well, the good old days with Munster trying to win their first ever Heineken Cup as it was then. But European club rugby now is very uninteresting until you get to the latter stages. I say that as somebody who would tune in if it was on, and now it passes me completely by until you get to the very end of it.
No, it's inessential now until the end. Fellas, 10. No. That is us done. That was our non-exhaustive memories of 2024, which we think will endure. Ronan, thank you very much.
Thanks, Joe.
Conor McKeon for today and all of the contributions over the last 3 months. Big thank you.
Pleasure, Joe. Thank you.
Happy New Year, everyone. Have a great couple of days, and real life is coming at you quick. Talk soon.